They erased me quietly. On Christmas night, I was still in the house, still smiling, still pouring drinks, while my husband and his family decided I no longer belonged in the story. They called me emotional, unnecessary, easy to replace. They took my access, my role, my name, and thought I would accept it because I always had. But what they didn't know was this: the company they were fighting over was standing on something I owned. I'm Tessa, and this isn't a story about screaming or revenge. It's about silence, proof, and the moment the truth stopped them cold. On the last night of the year, the house felt like a museum after closing. Everything looked perfect, staged, lit with warm lamps and evergreen garlands. But the air carried that flat quiet you get when people have already left in their minds. I stood at the kitchen island in my soft sweater and stocking feet, smoothing a napkin that did not need smoothing, listening to the dishwasher hum like it was trying to fill the silence for me. Outside, the cul-de-sac in Maple Ridge Estates glowed with porch lights and inflatable snowmen. Inside, my daughter's laughter drifted from the living room where the television played the countdown special. Laughter should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made me feel like I was hearing it through a wall. My name is Tessa Rowan. I am 43. I used to introduce myself with a job title, with confidence, with the kind of voice that got rooms to settle down and listen. Now, most days, people introduced me as Ryan Rowan's wife, as if that were the only credential left that mattered. Tonight, I tried to convince myself that was fine. Holidays do that to you. They make you believe you can press pause on everything complicated as long as you smile and pass the mashed potatoes. The doorbell rang, and the house came to life in a practiced way. My mother-in-law, Judith, swept in first, wearing her pearl earrings and that bright expression she reserved for witnesses. Behind her came two couples from Ryan's company, a neighbor and a friend of our daughter's family, all carrying bottles of champagne like offerings. Judith kissed my cheek and said, softly enough that it felt private, "You look nice, honey." Then, louder, she turned toward the guests. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to celebrate another year of Ryan's hard work and blessing." It was a small thing, one sentence, but it landed heavy. Ryan's hard work, Ryan's blessing, as if the story began and ended with him. I walked into the living room with a tray of appetizers, and I saw it immediately. The seating had changed. The chairs were arranged in a loose circle around the fireplace, and the chair beside Ryan was taken. Not by accident, not by confusion, by intention. Leela, one of the younger managers from Rowan Supply and Transit, sat close to him, leaning in with her knees angled toward his like they belonged there. Her laugh came easily. Her hand brushed his forearm when she spoke. Ryan looked relaxed in a way I had not seen in months, as if the weight of being careful around me had been set down for the night. I hovered for a second, tray in my hands, and my daughter, Emma, glanced over. She gave me a quick smile that did not reach her eyes, then turned back to her phone like she had been trained to stay out of my feelings. 17-year-olds are not cruel on purpose. They are loyal to whatever feels stable. I found another seat, slightly off to the side, the kind of spot that makes you feel like a guest in your own home. I placed the tray down and said, casually, "Food's out. Help yourselves." Ryan looked up. He smiled. The smile was polite. He did not stand. He did not come to me. He just nodded like I was a caterer who had done her job well. For the first time that night, my throat tightened. Not enough to cry, just enough to make breathing feel like a choice. Judith floated through the room, talking about business, about growth, about next year's opportunities. She introduced Leela to our neighbor and said, "This is one of Ryan's brightest, the kind of talent you have to keep close if you want to stay ahead." Then Judith gestured toward Ryan and said, "He built all this. It's been a remarkable journey." I waited, the way you wait when you have trained yourself to be patient. I waited for her to mention me, even in passing, for her to say that I had helped run the books when they were barely scraping by, that I had been the one who negotiated their first warehouse lease, that I had stayed up late creating the systems that kept their cash flow clean and their vendors paid, so Ryan could be charismatic in meetings and call it leadership. Judith did not mention me, not once. Someone asked what I did, and Judith answered before I could. Tessa keeps everything at home running. You know how it is, behind every successful man. She smiled like she had delivered wisdom. Leela laughed lightly. The men nodded, pleased with the familiar shape of the story. I felt myself shrink, just a fraction, invisible in plain sight. Emma's friend's mother leaned toward me and said, "You must be so proud." I wanted to tell her the truth, that pride was not what I felt, that what I felt was a slow grief, like watching someone erase your name from a photograph while you stand right there. But I smiled and said, "Yes, of course." As the evening moved forward, I performed like I always did. I refilled drinks, I checked the oven, I made sure the music was low enough for conversation, but not low enough for uncomfortable silences to become obvious. At one point, I walked into the hallway and caught my reflection in the mirror by the coat closet. I looked fine. I looked like the version of myself that people expect to see at holiday parties. Hair smoothed, makeup light, a soft dress that said approachable. I looked like someone who would not cause a scene. Maybe that's why they felt safe doing this to me. Near 10, the guests gathered in the kitchen for more champagne. Ryan opened a bottle with an easy pop, and everyone cheered like he had conquered something. He poured for Judith first, then for Leela, then for the others. He did not hand me a glass. It was so small, so easy to overlook, but my hands went cold. I reached for a glass myself, and as I did, Ryan's fingers brushed mine, not in affection, just in passing. He glanced at me and something flickered, a brief hesitation. Then he said, quietly, "After New Year, things will be clearer." He said it like a promise. He said it like a warning. I could not tell which. I leaned closer, keeping my voice even. "Clearer how?" Ryan's eyes slid away. "We'll talk later, not tonight." Not tonight, as if my questions were an inconvenience, as if my presence was a mood he needed to manage. Emra came into the kitchen, phone in hand, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, can you not?" she whispered, barely audible. "Please, not tonight. I have college stuff. I cannot deal with drama." I stared at her. She was my daughter, my heart outside my body, and still she felt like a stranger in that moment. Not because she didn't love me, but because she had been absorbing the version of reality Ryan and Judith were feeding her, that the family's stability depended on my silence. I nodded. I swallowed whatever wanted to rise in my chest and said, "It's fine." Later, while everyone watched the countdown special, I went to the pantry under the excuse of grabbing sparklers for the backyard. The pantry was off the small corridor that led to Ryan's home office. The door to the office was cracked. I heard voices. Ryan's voice first, low and tight, the voice he used when he was making decisions, not when he was being charming. Then a second voice, older, measured, not one of our guests, someone on a speakerphone. I paused, sparklers in my hand, and listened without meaning to. Ryan said, "We need it ready before the first board meeting. I do not want any surprises." The other voice replied, "The structure is straightforward. It's a governance update. You call it modernization. Most people won't question it." Ryan exhaled. "And Tessa?" A pause. Then the other voice, calm. "You keep it clean. You do not frame it as personal. You frame it as necessary. Board restructuring, clear roles, clear boundaries. If she pushes back, you let me handle communications." My stomach dropped. Board restructuring, governance update, modernization. The words sounded smooth, professional, harmless, but I knew what they meant when you translated them into life. They meant I was being moved out of the story. I backed away slowly, not making a sound, my palm pressed against the pantry shelf to steady myself. My heart beat hard, not fast, just heavy, as if it had suddenly realized it had been carrying more than it could handle. I walked back into the living room and no one noticed anything had changed. They were laughing, counting down, raising their glasses. Emma's eyes were bright. Judith clasped her hands like she was making a wish. Ryan stood near the fireplace. Leela stood close to him again, like she had been assigned to that spot. I moved toward Ryan without thinking, the way I used to move toward him at midnight every year, the way I used to believe meant something. I reached for his hand. He did not take it. His fingers hovered near mine, then dropped as if he had forgotten the gesture entirely. He glanced at me and something flickered, a brief hesitation. Then he said quietly, "After New Year, things will be clearer." 10, 9, 8. I felt the room tilt slightly, like the foundation beneath my feet had shifted. 7, 6, 5. Judith leaned toward Ryan and said something that made him smile. He did not look at me. 4, 3, 2. I held my glass up anyway, not because I felt celebratory, but because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. 1. The room erupted. Cheers, clapping. The television glittered with fireworks. People hugged. Judith kissed Ryan's cheek. Emma hugged her friend. Leela hugged Ryan, a quick squeeze that lingered a bit too long. I stood there, smiling because smiling was muscle memory, because I had learned that women like me survive by making things look smooth. But inside, something settled into place with quiet certainty. I was still in the house. I was still in the family. I was still standing in the center of the room. And yet I could feel it as clearly as the cold glass in my hand. I was already being erased. Chapter 2. Betrayal Without a Fight. The first business day after New Year's, the email arrived at 6:14 a.m., before the coffee finished dripping into the pot. I saw the sender line and my stomach tightened before I even opened it. Access update. Finance platform permissions. It was short, sterile, and written in the kind of language people use when they want to sound neutral while doing something personal. Effective immediately, your user role has been updated. If you believe this change was made in error, contact your system administrator. I stared at it, and so the words went slightly blurry. Then I blinked hard and tried again. Updated, not removed. As if it were an upgrade, as if I should be grateful. I opened my laptop anyway, logged into the finance platform I had set up years ago, and watched the screen reject me with a calm little message. Insufficient privileges. Request access from your administrator. I tried again, slower, as if the system might change its mind if I asked politely. It did not. In the next room, Ryan was already on a call, his voice crisp, bright, full of morning energy. He sounded like a man starting fresh. I walked into the kitchen with the laptop pressed to my ribs like a shield. Emma was at the counter, hair in a messy bun, tapping through scholarship emails and college portals. She looked up when she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked, but her eyes flicked away almost immediately, like she could sense the answer would make her day heavier. I turned the screen toward her. "They cut my access." Emma frowned. "Maybe it's a glitch." "It is not a glitch," I said, and I hated how steady my voice sounded. My hands were the only part of me that trembled. She chewed the inside of her cheek the way she did when she was thinking about how to keep everyone calm. "Mom, please, can you just talk to Dad later? I have my counselor meeting today and I cannot show up looking stressed." I stared at her for a second, not because she was wrong, but because she was 17 and already managing the emotional weather of the house like it was her job, like it was normal. I lowered the laptop. "Okay," I said, "later." At 7:02 a.m., another email arrived, this one from Human Resources at Rowan Supply and Transit. Organizational update, Q1 alignment. The message thanked employees for their dedication, emphasized operational efficiency, and announced refined reporting structures to support growth. There was a PDF attached. When I clicked it, my name appeared once, near the bottom, in a line that made my skin go cold. Tessa Rowan will transition to a non-operational advisory status effective immediately. Non-operational advisory status. It did not say I was fired. It did not say I was removed. It made it sound like a natural evolution, like a graceful step back, like something I had asked for. I closed the file and sat at the kitchen table. The surface was smooth under my palm, clean, expensive, polished. Everything around me looked like stability. But stability can be a costume. It can be a way to hide what is happening underneath. Ryan walked in wearing his coat, phone still in his hand. He kissed Emma's forehead, grabbed his travel mug, and glanced at me like he was checking a box. "Morning," he said. I held up my laptop. Why did I lose access? Ryan's eyes flicked to the screen, then away. He took a breath that sounded rehearsed. Temporary, just business. It took me a second to understand that he was not going to explain unless I forced him. Temporary for how long? I asked. He reached for the door handle, then paused like he'd remembered he was supposed to act like a husband. He turned back, his expression tight but controlled. "Tess," he said, "we are cleaning things up. The company is growing. We need clear roles. It is not personal." "It is my work," I said, and the words came out quieter than I expected. "I built those systems." Ryan's jaw tensed. "And I appreciate that. I do. But you haven't been in the day-to-day for a while. This is the right move." "Right for who?" I asked. He looked at Emma, then at me, then at the floor, like the answer was inconvenient. "Right for the business," he said. "We can talk tonight." Then he left, the door closing softly behind him, as if he hadn't just changed the shape of my life with a few sentences. Emma stood there for a moment, frozen, then she slid into her seat and stared at her laptop screen. Her voice was small. "Mom, please don't blow this up, not right now." I wanted to tell her that I wasn't trying to blow anything up. I wanted to tell her I was trying to stay visible. But I saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of conflict, the fear of instability, the fear that everything she was working toward could be affected by two adults who couldn't keep it together. So I nodded. I spent the morning doing what I always did when I felt cornered. I looked for facts. I checked old email threads, searched for system admin notifications, scanned my sent folder for any message that might explain this. There was nothing. Just the two emails, clean and official. Around noon, Judith called. Her voice was warm, almost cheerful, like she was calling to discuss holiday leftovers. "Honey," she said, "I heard you've been upset about some company changes." I pressed my fingers to my forehead. Upset is one word for it. Judith sighed, the kind of sigh that makes you feel childish. "Tessa, you can't take everything so personally. Ryan is under pressure. This is a growing company. People are watching." "People have always been watching," I said. "I was the one making sure they had nothing to see." Judith's voice sharpened slightly. "You're being emotional." The word hit like a slap, not because it was new, but because it was the oldest trick in the book. When a woman points at a problem, call her feelings the problem. "I am being factual," I said. "My access was removed. My role was changed without anyone talking to me." Judith lowered her tone, like she was delivering wisdom. "You're a wife and a mother first. That's not an insult. That's a gift. Many women would be grateful." I felt my throat tighten. "Do you hear yourself?" She paused, then said, softly, "You're tired. You've been tired for a long time. Let Ryan lead. Let this go." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear the refrigerator click and the pipes settle. The kind of quiet that makes you notice your own breathing. At 2:47 p.m., the crack appeared. An email landed in my inbox from a system admin account I recognized. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to a distribution list, the executive team, and for some reason an old alias I had created years ago for vendor communications. That alias forwarded to my personal account because I never bothered to delete it. Ryan had been in a rush. Someone had been sloppy. The subject line read, Board Packet Q1 Consent Draft. I opened it carefully, like touching a bruise. Attached were documents with polished headers and legal language that made my skin prickle. Board Consent Draft, updated internal authorization forms, a proposed resolution outlining governance modernization, refined authority for financial approvals, updated signatory permissions. I scrolled, heart pounding, and then I saw it. My name appeared, once near the bottom, in a line that made my skin go cold. Tessa Rowan will transition to a non-operational advisory status, effective immediately. And acknowledges receipt. Not approves, not signs, just acknowledges as if my involvement had been reduced to being informed after the fact. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence until the afternoon light shifted on the floor. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up balancing cash flow, all the mornings I'd walked Emma to school before driving to the office to fix a vendor dispute, all the times I had swallowed my own ambition because I believed partnership meant something. And now the story they were writing didn't have room for me. So I said nothing. Not yet. I just waited and I let the quiet become my strategy. When Ryan came home that evening, I didn't confront him in the doorway. I didn't wave the documents in his face. I watched him hang his coat, watched him loosen his tie, watched him ask Emma about her counselor meeting like nothing had changed. I listened to my own heartbeat, steady, stubborn, because the worst part wasn't the paperwork. The worst part was how confident they sounded in those documents, how certain they were that I would accept my disappearance as if it were the natural order of things. I looked at Ryan across the kitchen, and I realized something cold and clarifying. This was bigger than a misunderstanding, bigger than a rough patch, bigger than one awkward New Year's Eve. And whatever they were building, they had already decided I didn't belong in it. So I said nothing, not yet. I just waited, and I let the quiet become my strategy. Chapter 3. The Woman I Used to Be. It was clarity. Not relief, not peace, not even anger, just a clean understanding of where I stood and what had already been decided without me. Once that settled in, the panic eased. I slept that night for the first time since New Year's Eve. Not deeply, but enough to wake up steady. The next morning, after Emma left for school and Ryan drove off without mentioning the word yesterday, I made a call I had not made in years. Naomi Wright answered on the second ring. Tessa, wow, it's been forever. I need your help, I said. Not emotional help, professional. There was a pause, the kind that comes when someone hears a tone they recognize. Come by, she said. Bring whatever you have. Naomi's office sat above a small accounting firm in Stamford, tucked between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner. It was modest, practical, and exactly the kind of place where facts mattered more than appearances. Walking in felt like stepping back into a version of myself I had put away. She looked older than the last time I saw her, and so did I, but her eyes were the same, sharp, curious, unafraid of uncomfortable truths. I handed her my laptop and the printed board packet Ryan had never meant for me to see. She skimmed quickly, lips pressed together. This is clean, she said. Clean enough to pass a casual look. And not clean enough if someone looks closely, I replied. She nodded. Exactly. Tell me when the trust was set up. Before the wedding, I said. Ryan wanted to keep things simple, tax efficient, his words. Naomi's eyebrows lifted slightly. That matters. She pulled files from her cabinet and logged into an archive system, fingers moving fast. For the next hour, we worked without much conversation. Dates, documents, signatures, incorporation papers, lease agreements, payment flows, everything that tells the real story beneath the press releases. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me. Tessa, you need to hear this clearly. I waited. The family trust was established in late spring 2011. You are the sole beneficiary, not joint, not contingent, sole. I felt a strange warmth spread through my chest, not triumph, recognition. What about control? I asked. What about assets? Naomi turned the screen toward me. The warehouse property in Bridgeport, the routing software, the logistics model that Rowan Supply and Transit licenses, they are all held by the trust. The company uses them, it does not own them outright. I stared at the screen. Years of late nights and quiet decisions lined up in neat columns. So Ryan does not own what he thinks he owns, I said. Naomi shook her head. He owns the company shell, the operations, the brand, but the spine is still tied to you. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to savor it, to steady myself. I did not plan this as leverage. I planned it as protection. Naomi smiled faintly. That is usually how the smartest leverage works. She scrolled further, then stopped. Here, she said, see this? A series of internal transfers, adjustments, reclassifications. This is recent, she continued. Someone has been trying to simplify the picture, make it look like the trust is passive, that everything flows cleanly through the company. Ryan, I said. Or someone acting on his behalf, your CFO maybe. Mark Ellis, I said. He has always wanted tighter control. Naomi leaned forward. He is not sloppy, but someone was in a hurry. The word landed with weight, hurry. The same thing I had felt in the tone of those emails, the push to finalize before anyone asked questions. What happens if they try to sell? I asked. Naomi did not hesitate. They stall. Partners hesitate. Lawyers start asking about beneficial interest. Deals slow. As if summoned by her words, my phone buzzed on the desk. A message from an unknown number. It was brief. Tessa, hope you are well. We need to clarify asset ownership before moving forward. Can we talk? The sender was a regional distribution partner Ryan had been courting for months. I showed Naomi. She exhaled. There it is, the beginning of the pause. On the drive home, I thought about all the times I had minimized myself to keep the peace, all the dinners where I let my role be described for me, all the meetings I skipped so Ryan could feel like the leader. I had not lost my value. I had simply stepped out of the spotlight and let others forget where the structure came from. That night, Ryan mentioned the deal casually over dinner. They're dragging their feet, he said. Probably just legal noise. I looked at him across the table, at the man who believed confidence could outrun truth. Legal noise tends to mean something, I said. He shrugged. It will resolve. Emma watched us, eyes moving back and forth, sensing tension without understanding it. After she went to her room, Ryan turned to me. You've been quiet, he said. I'm thinking, I replied. He smiled, relieved. He mistook my silence for surrender. Later, I sat alone in the living room, the house dim, except for a lamp by the window. I opened a folder Naomi had sent me and read through it slowly. Trust language, beneficial interest, fiduciary duty. Words that once felt abstract now felt like anchors. I thought about Judith calling me emotional, about Leela sitting too close, about the way Ryan had stopped reaching for my hand. They had assumed my value lived in my willingness to support them quietly. They were wrong. This was not about revenge. It was not about humiliation or spectacle. It was about alignment, about restoring the balance between what I had built and how I was being treated. I closed the folder and rested my hands in my lap. Tomorrow, I would call an attorney, not the company attorney, my own. Tonight, I allowed myself one simple truth. I was not disappearing. I was coming back into focus. Chapter 4. Silence as Strategy. The next morning began with a calm that surprised me. Not the fragile calm of denial, but the steady kind that comes after a decision has already been made. I woke before Ryan, dressed carefully, and drove south toward the city while the sky was still pale and undecided. Julian Mercer's office sat on the 10th floor of a midtown building that smelled faintly of old paper and expensive coffee. He was in his early 50s, silver at the temples, with the posture of a man who listened more than he spoke. He did not rush me. He read everything Naomi had flagged, slowly, deliberately, making notes in the margins. When he finally looked up, his voice was even. "This is not about winning," he said. "This is about stopping them from moving without you." "That's all I want," I replied. "I don't want spectacle. I want control." Julian nodded. Then we proceed cleanly. That afternoon, he sent the notice of representation to Rowan Supply in Transit. It was formal, brief, impossible to ignore. He requested the full board packet for the first quarter meeting and formally stated that any governance changes involving assets connected to the Rowan Family Trust required acknowledgement from the beneficiary. From that moment on, the tone shifted. Ryan called me that evening. "What is this?" he asked, not bothering to hide his irritation. "Why is your lawyer contacting my company?" "Our company," I corrected gently, "and because I asked him to." There was a pause on the line. "This is unnecessary," Ryan said. "You're escalating things." "I'm clarifying," I replied. "There's a difference." He exhaled sharply. "The board meeting is for executives. Legal counsel doesn't need to attend." "I'm not asking to attend," Julian's voice said calmly, coming through my speaker. "I'm notifying you that I already am, through documentation." Silence followed. Heavy. Telling. Ryan ended the call without saying goodbye. The first quarter board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning in early February, held in the glass conference room overlooking the Hudson. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I needed the time, but because I wanted to see who arrived before me. Ryan was already there, standing near the windows, phone pressed to his ear. He looked confident from a distance. Up close, I noticed the tightness in his jaw. Lydia sat at the far end of the table, purse clasped in her lap like a shield. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't say you were coming," she said. "I was invited, just like everyone else." Ryan turned, his expression controlled. "Tess, this isn't the place." I met his gaze. "It is exactly the place." The other board members filtered in, exchanging polite greetings, sensing tension but not yet understanding it. Mark Ellis, the CFO, avoided my eyes entirely. Lila sat 2 seats away from Ryan, posture stiff, hands folded. When everyone was seated, Mark began to speak, launching into slides and projections, growth charts, expansion plans, a proposed restructuring designed to streamline decision-making. I listened without interrupting, my hands folded neatly in front of me. Then Mark reached the slide labeled Governance Update. "This adjustment," he said, "removes unnecessary layers and clarifies authority." Julian's voice came through the speaker on the center of the table. "For the record," he said, "authority is already clarified. It is simply not where you believe it is." Every head turned toward the speaker. Ryan stiffened. "I object," he said. "This meeting was not intended to include external counsel." Julian did not raise his voice. "I am not external," he replied. "I represent a beneficiary whose interests are directly implicated by the materials you are presenting." Lydia leaned forward, confused. "What beneficiary?" she asked. "This is a family company." I reached into my bag and placed a slim folder on the table. "This family," I said, "planned ahead." I slid the folder toward the center. Trusts documents, property records, licensing agreements. The room grew very quiet. Ryan stared at the papers without touching them. "What is this?" he asked. Julian answered for me. "The Rowan Family Trust, established prior to marriage. Sole beneficiary listed as Tessa Rowan. Assets include the Bridgeport warehouse property, the logistics routing software, and associated intellectual property licensed to Rowan Supply and Transit." Mark's face drained of color. "That's not accurate," he said. "The company owns those assets." Julian responded calmly. "The company uses those assets," he said. "There is a difference." Ryan finally reached for the documents, flipping through them too quickly to absorb the details. His confidence began to fracture, replaced with something sharper. "You never mentioned this," he said. "You never asked," I replied. Lydia shook her head. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "Ryan built this business." "He built it on a foundation," I replied. "I was that foundation." For the first time, I saw uncertainty ripple across the table, Not anger, not outrage, uncertainty. Lila shifted in her chair, eyes flicking between Ryan and the documents. Mark cleared his throat. "We need time," he said. "This changes the picture." Julian nodded. "That is precisely why we are here, to pause. Any attempt to restructure governance or approve asset-related decisions without beneficiary consent exposes the company to significant risk." Ryan leaned back in his chair, hands clenched. "So what?" he asked, voice tight. "You're freezing everything." "I'm clarifying," I replied. "There's a difference." He exhaled sharply. "So what? You're freezing everything." "I'm protecting what is mine and giving the board time to reassess." The word reassess hung in the air. Lydia looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time in years. "You planned this," she said softly. "No," I replied. "I prepared for life." Across the table, I noticed Emma standing near the door. She had slipped in quietly, likely at Lydia's request, expecting to observe, not witness this. Her eyes met mine. There was confusion there, and something else. Recognition. Ryan followed my gaze and turned. "This isn't appropriate," he sharply. "She shouldn't be here." "She's learning," I said, "just like everyone else." The chairwoman, a neutral party appointed years ago, spoke. "Given this information," she said, "I recommend we suspend any proposed changes until ownership and authority are clearly established." No one objected. Ryan did not argue. The decision was not dramatic. No votes slammed down, no raised voices, just a quiet agreement that nothing would move forward today. As the meeting adjourned, people gathered their papers with subdued efficiency. Mark avoided me entirely. Lila slipped out without a word. Lydia approached me hesitantly. "You should have told me," she said. "I tried. You weren't listening." Ryan lingered until the room was almost empty. "This isn't over," he said. "I know. That's the point." When I stepped back into the hallway, my hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I had not raised my voice. I had not demanded anything. I had simply shown the truth. And for the first time since all of this began, the silence felt like strength, not absence. Chapter 5. Proof, not rage. I did not stop holding it together out of spite. I stopped because I finally understood that holding it together had become my full-time job, and everyone else was free to pull at the seams. The board did not make its decision that day, not officially. They called it a temporary pause, a prudent review, a standard step in light of new information. But the pause changed the air in the building and in our home, the way a hairline crack changes a window. You do not notice it at first, then suddenly you're watching every gust of wind. Ryan came home that evening later than usual. He walked in with his shoulders squared like armor, but his eyes looked tired. He did not kiss my cheek. He did not ask how my day was. He went straight to the kitchen, opened a cabinet too hard, and poured himself a drink. Emma was at the table working on an essay. She looked up, watched him for a second, then went back to typing like she was trying to prove she belonged in a quieter world. Ryan finally spoke, voice flat. "So you did this." I set my keys down slowly and kept my tone calm. "I didn't do anything to you. I showed what was already true." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You showed it in front of everyone. You humiliated me." I met his eyes. "You erased me in front of everyone. You just did it politely." His jaw flexed. He lifted the glass, then lowered it again as if it no longer tasted right. "You could have told me," he said. I almost smiled at the irony. He had said the same thing in the conference room, like my silence was the betrayal. "I tried," I replied. "I asked questions, you avoided them. I brought up what I was losing, you called it business. Your mother called it emotion." At the word mother, he flinched. Judith was in the living room, I realized then. She stepped into the doorway as if she had been waiting for the moment she could reclaim control of the narrative. "This is not how family behaves," she said. "You handle private matters privately." I looked at her and felt something settle in me. Not anger, not hatred, just the end of a story I had kept telling myself. Family doesn't erase someone in public and then demand privacy, I said. Judith's lips tightened. "You have always been dramatic," she snapped. "You always needed to feel important." Emma's fingers froze on her keyboard. She stared at her grandmother like she had never seen her before. I kept my voice even. I didn't need to feel important. I needed to exist. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice as if volume could turn this into a negotiation. "What do you want?" he asked. "Money, control, a title?" I shook my head. "I want the truth on paper. I want what I built to stop being treated like an accident, and I want you to stop moving things around behind my back." He stared at me for a long moment, then he said quietly, "You're not coming back into the company." There it was, finally, said out loud. I did not argue, I did not plead, I did not ask for a seat beside him again. "I'm not asking to come back. I'm asking you to stop pretending you can take what isn't yours." The next few weeks were a slow unwinding. Lawyers sent letters, the board requested documentation, partners asked questions they had never dared to ask when Ryan seemed untouchable. Mark Ellis, the CFO, stopped replying in his usual confident tone. Lila stopped appearing at company events entirely. Ryan hated the uncertainty. He hated not being able to charm his way through it, and the more he tried to push, the more the board leaned toward restraint. Not out of loyalty to me, but out of self-preservation. Risk changes people faster than morality ever does. One afternoon in late February, Ryan called me while I was at the grocery store. I stepped into the parking lot, cold wind pushing at my coat. "They want me to step back," he said. His voice sounded smaller than I expected, as if the confidence had been on loan. "Who?" I asked. "The board," he said. "They're calling it a temporary leave while the asset review is completed." I closed my eyes briefly. "Are you going to fight it?" I asked. Silence. "I can't," he admitted, not without making it worse. Not without admitting that his authority had been built on a story that did not hold up under scrutiny. When I got home, Emma was sitting on the stairs with her phone in hand, her eyes red. "Dad told me," she said. I sat beside her. "What do you feel?" I asked. She swallowed. "I don't know," she whispered. "I feel like I've been living inside a lie and I didn't even notice." I reached for her hand and this time she took it. "I didn't want to choose sides," she said. "I just wanted everything to stay normal." "I know," I replied. "That's why people like your dad count on silence. It keeps everything looking normal." She turned her face toward me. "Are you okay?" she asked. The question landed softly, but it opened something in my chest that had been locked for years. "I'm getting there," I said. In early March, I met Ryan at a quiet diner off the Merritt Parkway. Not for drama, for closure. We sat in a booth by the window, the kind of place where the coffee is always too hot and the waitresses call you honey without meaning anything by it. He looked older than he had a month ago. His hands kept moving, tapping the edge of the table, as if his body still wanted to control something. "I didn't think it would come to this," he said. "I did," I replied, gently. "I just didn't want to be right." He stared down at his cup. "You could have destroyed me," he said. I held his gaze. "I didn't want to destroy you. I wanted to stop disappearing." He looked up, eyes glossy but stubborn. "So what now?" I took a breath, then said the sentence that had been sitting inside me for weeks, waiting to be spoken in the right room. I chose proof, not rage. Ryan's shoulders sagged slightly, like he had been bracing for a blow that never came. "I loved you," he said. I nodded. I loved who we were when we still told the truth. The board's final decision arrived in writing a few days later. Governance changes were frozen pending independent review. Ryan would step back from day-to-day leadership until the review concluded. Any asset-related decisions required documented acknowledgement tied to the trust beneficiary. Clean, legal, quiet. The kind of consequence that doesn't make headlines, but changes everything. Judith called me once after that, voice thin. "You've made your point. Now stop." I did not argue with her. I did not explain. I just said, calmly, "My point is not a punishment. It's the truth." Then I hung up. In April, I cleared out the spare room that had become a storage space for old holiday decorations and forgotten dreams. I set up a desk, I brought out my laptop, I printed my resume, not as an apology, but as a reminder. I started taking consulting calls again, small at first, then steadier. My name began to mean something outside that house. Emma visited me one evening while I was working. She stood in the doorway watching me type. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," I replied. She hesitated, then said, "I'm proud of you." It was a simple sentence. It felt like a bandage placed carefully over a wound that had been open too long. By the time summer came, my life was not perfect. It was not a dramatic victory. It was something better. It was mine. And if you've ever been the woman people leaned on, the woman whose work disappeared into someone else's success, the woman who was told to stop being emotional when she was simply being honest, I hope you remember this. Justice does not have to be loud. It just has to be right. If this story hit close to home, share your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories where the truth wins without cruelty, stay with me here.